Hey guys, welcome to the first MultiBlock spotlight. Holy freaking squids. I was looking around and I noticed there's a lot of block spotlight videos out there. Not too many MultiBlock spotlights. This is a spotlight where I cover a different MultiBlock structure in each video. And today, as you can see, is big reactors. Why not? This is one of the coolest parts of a mod I have ever... Well, I mean, like, this is the mod. Well, there's, like, turbines, but we're not going to get into those today. Today is all about the reactors. So this here is a 3x3x3 big reactor. No, it's not very big. This is the absolute smallest you can make a big reactor. I think you would want to skip this one and at least go to this one. Let's turn this guy on. You can see I've been testing them and making sure they work. Now you will notice the fuel it's using is incredibly low, but it's only giving about 260 RF per tick. And it's running at 800, you know what, let's get rid of that. It's running at 856 degrees. And if you read here, the higher the core temperature, the more fuel it's going to burn up, which is wasted fuel. And so you're getting low fuel or low power, high heat, and that's just not good. The next step up from that, like the very next step, would be this one. This has one fuel rod and one spot of cooling. And if we kick this guy on, we will see it's going to run at a lower heat and give slightly more power. I think it averages out about 306-ish. And the heat is at 594. And this heat is at 850. So this one gives out just a bit more power with a lower heat, which means less fuel burn up. But this one I would recommend skipping as well. If you just need the very, very basic big reactor, this is the one to build. As you can see, it is a 5x5x3. It has cooling on every single side of the core. If we turn this one on, we will see it'll run mid 200s-ish in core temp, put out over 400 RF per tick, and so this one is running much more efficient than this one and this one. Now, you're thinking, well, these are all pretty much square. You know, this one's a little rectangle, and then this big, bad behemoth here, this is not the max size for a big reactor. I think currently there is no max size for a big reactor. I mean, you know, yeah. It just, yeah. This guy is a massive, massive reactor. As you look at all the fuel rods. I don't know how big it is, but it's big. I guess we could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 by 15 by 9 or 10 tall. So there's a lot of fuel being used in this. And if we kick it on, this will produce nearly 100,000 RF per tick. But look at the heat. The heat is ridiculous. And remember, the higher the heat, the more fuel gets burnt up. So this is using 2.1 millibuckets per tick. So it is chewing through fuel. You get a lot of power, but you're going to get a lot of waste. This waste can actually be reprocessed into plutonium and stuck right back into a big reactor as fuel. Yeah, and then these are the fuel inlets and outlets. You can change what they are. Outlet mode, inlet mode. You can tell it to, eject the waste or eject the fuel if you want to, like, rebuild it, eject fuel, blah, blah, blah. This one is set to output, and it's spitting, as you can see, the cyanite into the chest. And you can tell here in the controls, it's defaulted to auto-eject waste. You can tell it to not auto-eject waste for, if that's what you want to do, I guess. Yeah. So that is a big reactor. This is just to show that you are not tied to squares. This is just, it's a rectangle, and it puts out about 10k RF per tick, 10, 11k, right around there, as you'll see. Yeah. And you can control each fuel rod individually. So the way this works is this is now running at 90%. It's now running at 80%, 70, 60, 50, so on, so forth. So that fuel rod is now running at 50%, and it does reduce the amount of power it produces, but it also reduces the heat because it's running, it's not running as hard as the other ones. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. You can control, there's ways to control it with, turtles and all that, but that's not something I'm getting into. This is all about the big reactor itself. Over here, we are looking at different kinds of coolant. This big reactor has gelid cryothium in it. Currently, Resonant Ender is the best coolant that I know of. If we turn this one on, and these are the exact same size, exact same number of fuel rods, exact same, fuel, everything's exactly the same. And if we turn, alright, so let's go check this one. So this one's running at 1250 degrees, that's pretty high. And it's producing 9.8 K RF per tick. If we look at this one has Resonant Ender. It's running at about 1250 and 9.5 K RF per tick. So, yeah, they're running about the same heat, although this one does give out a slightly higher amount of power. So, this is easier to get. If you use gelid cryothium, keep in mind it does sink. So you will have to fill every single space inside with gelid cryothium. So just keep that in mind. So, all that work for 300 RF more, which that's not really worth it. This one could also double as a squid tank. This is filled with water, and if we turn it on, watch the heat. You do not want to use water as a coolant. You just don't. You just don't do it. And you'll see about 3.6 K RF per tick. So 3.6 or 9.5. Yeah, do not use water unless you're into squids swimming around in your reactor. Then go ahead. So I want to cover the basic do's and don'ts. Oh, yeah, I forgot. The reactor itself, the corners have to be the reactor casing. The reactor controller can go anywhere within a wall. It cannot go in the floor, and it cannot go in the ceiling. It can go anywhere within a wall. So if we fill this in, and you can see it turned back to just individual blocks. But if, say we want the reactor controller there it is. So anywhere within a wall. And we can show this by going boop and boop, and it doesn't work. So anywhere within a wall. So just keep that in mind. So you're gonna, just to build a basic thing here. I'm not trying to build anything super great. This is just instructional kind of thing. And then, so that's the floor. The floor does not have to be these. The only thing that has to happen is everywhere there's a fuel rod, there has to be reactor casing below it. So if you have fuel rods like that for whatever reason, that has to be reactor casing. The rest of this can be glass, or any amount of it if you want, like glass and every other thing. You know, if that's what you want, then go ahead. Again, the corners must be reactor casing. So it would go like this. If you're familiar with applied energistics, it's the same idea as the molecular assembly chamber. The walls can be either the casing or the glass. It doesn't, or, you know, a mixture of whatever kind of thing you want, basically. If you want to make a design in the wall, or, you know, whatever. You want one wall to be casing. You want one wall to be glass. That is perfectly fine. Let's finish off these walls real quick. Alright. And then the fuel rods go the height, like that, -1 of the big reactor. And then on top of these must be control rod, or the reactor control, the reactor control rod go on top of the fuel rod. And then the top can be anything you want, again, you know, glass or casing. Whatever fuel or whatever coolant you're going to use goes 1 block below the ceiling. Here, make sure you get all the spots. If you see it running somewhere, there's no coolant there, so you can see it's all still. And then you can just fill it in however you want. Like so. And then we'll toss some glass in there, just why not? And it will not activate the MultiBlock until you stick in a controller. So there you go. That's a pretty basic big reactor, kind of ugly, different kinds of stuff going on. And then there's reactor power tap. This is where you pull the power out. So any power that this thing generates comes out through one of these. And these are the same as like all the rest of it. It can go anywhere within a wall, an interior like wall, not the corners. And then you're going to need reactor fuel input and waste output. So you're going to want to make one of these output, and then you can have it output into a chest or whatever. Fuel goes in here. You can use hoppers or AE or whatever. You can put it in manually if you want. And yeah, and so you stick your power to here and run it through tesseracts or whatever, and when you're ready, kick it on and enjoy. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics. That is the very basic, you know, if you're just trying to build one for the very first time and you're not sure how to do it, that is basically how to do it. There's, like I said, there's only a few must things with the corners, with where things are within a wall. Again, you cannot put it in a corner. It must be within a wall. Like, within the wall. Yeah, and I think that's going to do it. Hopefully you find this helpful. Hopefully you find this interesting. Hopefully you look forward to more squids and reactors. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.